welcome to the Snow Horse Marketing Podcast. Today we have a special treat. Ron, we have you coming back as a guest. How are you today, Ron?
I am doing fantastic. How about yourself?
Oh, I am just dandy, as you know. I'm so excited to reconnect with you and have you on as a guest again.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be a great conversation. It was a great conversation before, and we're going to just put some knowledge out there, help some people out.
Yeah. So for those who may not know, Ron is actually the founder of Builder Comms, and he is the leader of creating effective systems for the construction industry. And so today it's very fitting that the category he chose to speak on is systems. So we'll be talking about that today. So I would love to just start off, Ron. I know we were chatting a little bit earlier about different systems and how you build them. Why do you feel systems are so important for the success of a project?
Yeah, I think it's the foundation. So I was just having this conversation with a guy yesterday, and we were talking about it. And I was like, man, the word system gets used so much that I think we've actually lost track of what it really is. Like, a system is just that foundation of how you do it, where you're at. Like, this is how we do it at ABC Contracting. Like, that's the foundation, and that's why it's so important, because it becomes reproducible. The worst thing we can do is just do stuff and continue doing them, and no one else can ever do it. Or it just goes to complete chaos whenever anybody else. You're like, hey, you go handle that project. Rock and roll. I know you're the guy, and I know you can handle it. And that's the end of the conversation. Unfortunately, that happens all too often in just about every industry.
Well, I know as we've been talking about different systems that you and I both use, we're in very different industries. You're in the construction, I'm over here in marketing, but there are similar experiences we have. And again, it's that delegation piece, right? How much delegation are you able to give others? I know so many solopreneurs or small business owners where it is all on their back. I love the question, if you left your business, could it run by itself, right? About 50% of businesses can say yes to that. The next question is, if you left, could your company grow without you? And I think it's only 2 or 3% of businesses can say that. And that is that is the difference between having a system and not having a system.
Yeah, and then also having a vision with that. So, like, if you can create a system that doesn't scale. That's just like, here it is. This is a function of itself. Like, this is how we do this, and it doesn't necessarily change. But over time, if your business changes, like, you have to be able to adjust that. You have to be able to change that system. And if employees or anybody around you is not empowered to have those conversations, you just start jamming in. It's like the round peg in the square hole. Like, you have a system from, say, when you were doing $1 million a year that you're still trying to use when you're doing 5. Like, this stuff has to evolve. And if you're the leader, you have to be able to give your organization the ability to evolve those, because you trust them and you have the systems in place for them to evolve how stuff works every day.
I love the conversation about codependence versus interdependence in the workspace. Codependence, extreme examples like micromanagement, right? Interdependence, like an extreme example, is a CEO who calls in once a year, right? That would be an extreme example. But I completely agree with you. You want to be able to give people confidence. Now, this doesn't mean that you're just trusting someone off the street to go build a new system for you. I know, like, within our own company, we actually do a 90-day trial period for anyone that we bring in. And what we're looking for is, can they learn and use our systems? If they can, then we can give them more to do. We've also created some methodology. I don't know about you guys, but we are huge Google Workspace. Like that is what we use. That's what we live in. It has simplified so much of our business. And recently we started to use Google Classroom to simplify even our trainings. And by creating a better system for our trainings using Google Classroom, we have shaved off over 3 weeks of time in the training process of new people coming in the door. And it has just been phenomenal, taking a lot of time off of management and leader shoulders, and also gives them more autonomy to like, how fast am I going to go through and learn? If there's a section they don't understand, they're able to go better. So we're actually spending less time training, and the trainees are learning the system even better. So that's to me a good indicator of when a system works. For you, if someone's trying out a new system and it's not working, what are good ways to find out why it's not working or if a better system could be implemented?
Yeah, absolutely. That great question. But before I like what you just described is a prime example of a system that's scalable. No matter how big you get, you can continue to feed data in and get data out of what you're talking about doing with Google Classroom there. So I think I'm a big component. I think 99% sure we talked about this last time, but for people that didn't listen last time, like I like to become dangerously good at stuff. Like that's just, I just get it. I get an understanding and I get good enough to be dangerous. And then I find somebody that's what they do. So I can say, this is how we do it here at BuilderComs, but you're the expert. I want you to come in and evaluate how we do it, but I understand it. So I can have an intelligent conversation. I think all too often as leaders, how systems get broken is we don't 100% understand what's even happening. And then we say, this is how it should be. And then we bring somebody in that doesn't 100% even comprehend it and feed them into a broken system. When what we need to do is have an understanding, just get dangerous with it, build out a system, and then maybe not even necessarily hire somebody, consult with somebody, pay somebody to come in and be like, this is how I feel this should operate. And then get their feedback and then plug somebody in there that's a professional at it. And don't just let them go completely rogue. Be in that conversation because you have at least a rough understanding of what you're doing.
Oh, yeah. I believe the best entrepreneurs and business leaders are generalists. They're able to go in, learn a skill enough that they can perform it, and enough to find someone who can replace. I know an experience that I had with one of my managers this summer is we were struggling with our cold email approach for our own leads. We were just struggling with it. So we decided to build out our best emails. We are going to do our best things. We were interviewing lots of experts, trying to get experts in. We're having a lot of challenges finding a right fit for what we needed. So we just started doing it ourselves. So we built this out as we're still meeting with these experts. And we built it out and we got a 30 to 70% open rate on our first attempt after doing a lot of research. So that was really great to have. But then when we're having these pitches where people are pitching us like best case scenario, after 6 months, you'll get a 2% open rate. We're like, well, we've already figured out a better way than apparently what you, the expert, can do. It was actually quite an entertaining conversation. But yeah, I feel like when you are choosing to be that generalist, you are choosing to dive in, you are choosing to learn how to do it. It helps you stay away from, the charlatans or people who are just not knowledgeable at all about what's going on. Like I know for my teammate Abby and I, it took us 2 weeks of research to be able to do that, right? And so it was a really good experience for us to realize, hey, we want to build out the system first and find someone who can improve it. And it was a wonderful experience for our team to see that as well, to be like, hey, we build it first and we want someone to fit what we know already works instead of just going to someone. I mean, even in our financials, we've done that. I know some people have made fun of me because like I'll be the person to go fill out all the tax paperwork and all the thing, like I'll go fill out a lot of the stuff the first time, but it's because I want to understand it. And then I'll bring it to them and be like, what did I do wrong? Go to the professionals and say, what can I do better? But it's really important to make sure that at least the first go around, I understand what's going on. So in the future, I know what questions to ask.
Yeah, I think with what you're talking about there, one of the most important takeaways is that you built a system that could be built on. Like, you're like, here's my understanding. I built this. Now we can improve upon it. And having that mindset, I think too often we get like locked in, like, since we're the founders, we're the CEOs, like, this is the system. I built this. This is how it should be. Like, this is how I do it. But when you're bringing in better talent that aligns with your company and where you're going, you should let them do what they're great at. But set up some guards so they can't just drive the car off the cliff, but give them some motion in there. Like, I think too, like, when you're talking helicopter, like just being over top of people and micromanaging it. Like, I guess my question always is if you want to be that involved, why are you hiring somebody? If you think you're so good at it, why don't you just continue doing it?
Yeah, I know one of our board members gave me some great advice earlier this year. He told me about a time where he was hired to be a property manager, and the person who hired him told him, okay, here's what your job is: keep occupancy at this level, and I trust you to have the creativity to make it happen. And I love that mindset because it really does resonate with what I want to build in the organization that I have, is a place where people can run. People have so many innate talents and skills and so many abilities that they are developing. I can't tell you how many times I meet with or work with people who've been in corporate for very long and they've just been like handcuffed with process. So they're not able to excel in the ways that they wanted to as an individual. I feel like taking the other approach is so important, especially in this modern age of, I mean, our team is fully remote at this point. And so I want those individuals to have the confidence to make a decision on their own. There isn't a peer to turn around in the chair and talk to. And so creating systems that allow them that interdependence, but again, with the guardrails, like we do Friday reports every Friday, every team member's got to fill it out. And that's tied to pay, right? You got to fill it out. You got to tell us what you did and how you did it. And I feel that is then a much better process than some of these other companies that are just putting spyware on all their employees' computers. And yes, there is time and place for that. I'm not, I understand, especially with like protecting data and things, but a lot of times if you can create an environment that allows for that creativity, allows a process for people to even create a new process like we did with Google Classroom, it's a completely different feel in a company.
Yeah, and so what you're talking about in corporate America, like, that is why I think, like, just systems, it's just so overused. I look at it, and because I work in the construction realm of things, like, it's the foundation, and then you build the house off of that. Now, when you're building a house, there's many different ways to do it that still meet code. And if you get anywhere between, I estimate most of the time, more than 3 builders together, they're all going to have very different opinions on how a 2x4 should be done, or like it. But are they wrong? No, it's just a different way. But what ends up happening is, as long as that foundation's right, that framing of that house would be right. The roof would be right. Everything would be right because it was built off of that foundation. And that is how I think we should look at this and look at systems going forward. Because too often stuff manages to just become what you talked about in corporate, where everybody's just following a process because this is how we've always done it.
Mhm.
No matter what, and what detriment that has to the company, that's not how it should be.
Well, and I will just say on an energy level, if people don't feel like they can speak up, if people don't feel like they can make improvements, it does become very stagnant. It can often create very difficult place to grow. And some of it's individual personalities, but the piece that we can fix is the environment and the systems that we put in place. One thing I love watching is like trends. So every week, the other leaders on the team and I, we do what's called a leadership inventory. And we check in about where are we? What are our numbers on the company? What is happening there? And the goal with that is for us to find trends so we can see like, oh, hey, this was really down. What did we do differently that was so far down? Or, hey, we exceeded quota by 50%, right? What did we do right this month that allowed us to do that? Right. And I think it's so important to make sure that you're having those checks and balances within your organization and those people that you trust, those other people who are in leadership. And if you struggle finding someone to put in leadership, I'll tell you, it took us a long time. For me, it took us a long time. We had to go through several people that we hired and trained, and it maybe wasn't a good fit for on either side before we found those gems of individuals who want to take the lead. And I loved your analogy about the foundation. Actually, one of our team members, Ben, he's just incredible and brilliant. And his analogy that he talks about, one time he was working someplace that a Starbucks was being built nearby. And he remembered for months and months and months and months and months, it looked like nothing was happening. Like it just looked like nothing was happening. But what they were doing, what he found out later, is they were making the foundation. And as soon as the foundation was done, the building was up within weeks, right? And so I love that analogy of it's worth spending the time to get the foundation right. It's worth it. And that has been my experience as well.
Yeah, because if you don't, it has to be rebuilt. And that's what we see with business is there's a growth and then there's a breaking point where then it has to be fixed. So tore back down some. Like it's not just like we can come in and fix it sometimes. Sometimes you have to go backwards in order to go forward. So by having that foundation solid to begin with, it will set you up for success. And it will continue to guide your growth. And you know what's great about a good foundation is like you can add on to it. You can build it, you can do an addition. You can continue to grow, not just up, but also out. And it's just like a business. There's a lot of similarities to building a home and to building a business that I think, like you said, with the Starbucks, is a lot of work went into that foundation. And once that was right, the structure goes up so much easier and just fast. It just happens. Boom, it's done.
Well, and going back and fix it also can burn relationships. I remember when I worked with an organization that was in the construction world, and they had everyone on net 30s for purchasing certain products and things like that. And they didn't enforce the net 30. They had no system in place to enforce the net 30 of getting paid. And so years went by, like over a decade of business went by, and they had never enforced it. Well, they're getting to the point where they're growing and growing and growing and going into the multi-millions, right? And this has got to get fixed, right? It's to the point it's not bearable for the company to be that patient with things not being paid on time. And so they actually had to go back and bring in controllers and bring in new, they're doing the hard work of going backwards to fix this very important piece of the business. And they ended up losing so many people's trust. So many people had gotten away with not paying for so long that they just dealt with a lot of, like reputation issues and interpersonal issues because they set those boundaries, which were right and appropriate for them to set. But because they let it go for so long, it did negatively impact the business for a time. And then it got back on course. And that was a very, very painful correction that they had to go through. I remember being there for a piece of that. And yeah, you don't want to have to go through that. So if you build it right, or if you are an established business and you're there and you're like, I can see where the cracks in the foundation are, do it now. Don't delay. Do it now. It is worth the pain, frustration, effort, and research to fix it as soon as possible.
Absolutely. And you don't want to be on net 30s without a system for that. But like when you were just talking about the a business and you can see the cracks, see you can fix that stuff. Or even like I did this with a cleaning company, and I just this analogy came like the modular homes where you can take those and set them on a foundation, like something that's already built that is not on a foundation. You can take it and you can set it on a foundation. Now, is there growing pains and moving pains? Absolutely. When you set that modular home on there, you got to do some work to make sure it stays together, patch the seams, and make it pretty again. But you take it and you put it on a solid foundation, or you move a house from a crumbling foundation to a solid foundation. So you can do that with a business. You just have to start working on it and understand it's not always going to be pretty, adverse results, but those can be fixed as well.
Oh, agreed. Agreed, definitely. Well, it has been a delight to speak with you, Ron. So if you want to go to Builder Comms, is it buildercomms.com?
Yes, it is.
Okay, wonderful. And then can they also find you? Are you on LinkedIn?
Yep, I'm on all social media.
Okay, wonderful. Ron, thank you so much for being here today. It was a pleasure as always.
Thank you for having me.